If you're looking to further understand the mind, consciousness, the occult, symbolism, the ancient Egyptian mythos, philosophy, and truth discovery, make sure to tune in to the Cubbyhole podcast hosted by myself, Nate Cap, and co-hosted by Brandon Martin. The Cubbyhole podcast is a repository of critical knowledge that deals with and covers the many facets of the human condition, especially what causes most of the suffering going on in this world. Make sure to start at podcast number 1 and work your way forward for maximum value and understanding. The Cubbyhole podcast is found on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple, TuneIn Radio, Simplecast, and Cubbyhole.com. That's CUBBYWHOLE.com.
All right, this is the one reading about my struggles in life. mama across the countryside. The lab coats are coming. Oh, the lab coats are coming. Yeah, the lab coats are coming. Lab coats are coming. Lab coats are coming. Yeah, them lab coats are coming. But we do not consent. We will not comply. We do not consent. We will not comply. In the land of the free, home of the brave, try to enslave, cradle to grave. Yeah, we do not consent. We will not comply. Destroy the proof, bury the youth, try to hide and censor truth. Yeah, we do not consent. We will not comply. Law of exclusion based on illusion must be forgot about the Constitution. We do not consent. We will not comply. Oh, capital state, my state. Got a lot of freedoms that they're coming to take. Death to religion and our personal belief. Taking focus in, there will be no relief. Civil liberties are under attack. Where in the world are the Democrats? No senator, assemblyman, or governor. They all bow down to farmer and they follow the herd. They bow down to farmer and they follow the herd. They bow down to farmer and they follow the herd. But we do not consent. We will not comply. We do not consent. We will not comply. Yeah, all the races, colors, and creeds cannot put us on our knees. Yeah, we do not consent. We will not comply. Your mandatory bigotry. Don't tread on me with your tyranny. Yeah, we do not consent. We will not comply or do no harm. Must disarm all them animals on the farm. Yeah, we do not consent. We will not comply. You are the needle, we are the sky. Injecting poison, you pushing too far. Committed no crime, don't need immunity. Isolated people, we fight to be free. Oh, realize, hypnotized, staying in rectangle eyes. Oh, realize, hypnotized, staring in rectangle eyes. Oh, yeah. Injury, can't perceive, claiming it's a fallacy. But the mama know the baby better than anybody else. 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 Mama ain't a mama, mama ain't my mama, mama ain't a mama, mama ain't my mama. Yeah, mama know the baby better than anybody else. 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 Mama ain't a mama, mama ain't my mama, mama ain't a mama. So I'll never consent. Yeah, we do not consent. We will not comply. We do not consent. Yeah, we will not comply. You are the needle, we are the scum. Injecting poison, you pushing too far. Committed no crime, don't need your immunity. Isolated people, we fight to be free. Right, this is
Hey, Brandon, thanks for having me, man. This song is for you and Nathan by me and Doug. flesh and bones behind. Go as far as you are inclined, where the dream and reality seem to be intertwined. The simple truth you long to see from the deep dark depths of the memory and the peace you're dying to find. Everything combined, it's all in the mind. They don't know what you're talking about. They don't care, so they shut you out. They're afraid of an alternate route and the light to begin shining in on their shadow of doubt. The brain will remain confined till the extinction of mankind, but the keys to the hidden realm of the undefined are all in the mind. It all relates, it all ties in. As sure as the sun comes around again, it changes once, changes again, appearing the same as it all ties in. Is this your life or fantasy? Nothing is ever what it seems to be. Something like that.
Wow. Another absolutely amazing talk from Mark Passio. He's always been my favorite speaker, and it's always inspiring to hear him speak. And I hope people are starting to understand and receive this message. because we don't have a lot of time to get this figured out. And you can see that we have all of these great speakers putting their passion and their time and their effort into helping us understand this difficult lesson that we all have to learn. And this conference has been just absolutely amazing. And I'm so honored to finally speak and share a stage with Mark Passio and all of these other complementary great light workers. It's just, words can't describe how amazing it's been for me and my personal experience with this. And I hope that you've received value from the information that you've heard here. And check us all out at the onegreatnetwork.com. And you can find the individual speakers and the presenters there. You can make donations on their pages. That's the onegreatnetwork.com. You can find Mark Passio's work at whatonearthishappening.com. He also has a gift section there where you can donate and receive lots of great merchandise, lots of great presentations, access all of his information for free. It's just an amazing website. Also check out myself, Nate Cap, and Brandon Martin, and I'm Douglas Martin at thecubbyhole.com. You can also find our work on the One Great Network, and most of the other speakers you can find there too. And we've got some new blood coming in too, and some of the speakers that presented I had never seen before. So it was just amazing how well all of the material corresponded, and I hope everybody is excited about it as I am, because I'm just really excited, to have been a part of this. And we're going to do a roundtable discussion now. Let some of the other speakers chime in on this and try to field any questions that might come in and help bring a little bit more clarity to this and what this has all been about. So let's see who else we got here in the room. I see we got Mark Passio standing by. Let's see what Mark has to say.
Hey, Douglas.
How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing well. I just want to say this was one of the best conferences that I've ever participated in. I want to thank all the speakers for their contributions. They were phenomenal. All the presenters were phenomenal.
Absolutely.
I want to thank, of course, Brandon for hosting the event, and the whole tech team just did a fantastic job. And I think the whole event really went off perfectly. So thank you to everyone involved.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, Mark. It makes me feel so much better. And yeah, the tech team has been amazing, and just everybody pulling together and making the effort has just been amazing. And I'm really honored to be a part of it. Like I say, I'm almost at a loss for words, and it's been an exhilarating marathon just the same. And we've all been working hard here behind the scenes, especially Tyler Bloyer and Lauren Striggs in the control room there. So special thanks to those guys for really hanging in there and getting us through this. So I see we got Will Keller in the room, and looks like Brandon made it on here. Let's see what Will has to say. How you doing, Will?
I'm doing good, Doug. Thanks so much, man. And I just want to say what a phenomenal conference. It was just looking at the totality, the message is just incredible. There's so many tools and so much knowledge that can be applied. And I'm thrilled to be a part of it, so I'm really honored. So thank you, Brandon and Nate, and of course the tech team. You guys make this happen, man. So, and thanks for all the attendees and the presenters.
That sounds great. Do we have some questions here coming in that we can field here while we're in here, and see what we can get on the table for a discussion? I'm going to take a look here in the chat and see if I can grab a couple questions out of here. There was a couple of questions that I wasn't really sure how to answer, but
I got a
see
good
what
one
you
here.
guys have to say.
How do you address that most of the mystery schools today are corrupt and using this knowledge to manipulate others? Anyone want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. I'll take that one. Um, I think that we don't need to join brick and mortar mystery schools anymore. That may have once been the case, but the fact that it is true, as the person asking the question stated, that yes, the modern so-called mystery tradition teaching schools of the modern day have become corrupt, like Freemasonry, for example, and many others, and they're focused, far too much on money, on membership, not really teaching people the real esoteric side of any of the traditions that really need to be focused on and really learned, and very often have completely ulterior motives of power in the 3D world, of just networking with other people for power, money, influence, etc., and or outright corrupting and teaching wrong things, so that they tighten their grip if their dark occultists may have infiltrated some of those institutions. I don't think it's necessary any longer to go and seek out and join brick and mortar institutions. I think that anybody who's an autodidactic learner, meaning a self-taught individual, somebody who is interested in motivating themselves to learn, can go online, download huge amounts of information on any of these topics that were discussed over this week at the course of this weekend conference, and learn on their own and initiate themselves. And that's what I've always recommended. I don't think people should really be joiners and participate in modern institutionalized versions of the so-called mystery schools of today. I think they are fallen. I think modern so-called occult institutions or fraternal brotherhoods or orders are largely corrupt. I think that's well known, and I don't think we really have to take this information from them necessarily. I think that again, the tool at our disposal is the internet. And if we know how to mine it effectively, if we know how to search and mine the internet for those gems of wisdom, we can do this on our own. So there's really no need to even worry about that. The Grand Lodge, so to speak, is all over the world, and it is the light workers of the world who are organizing and speaking at conferences like this. And it could be anyone who's driven to really learn and understand this esoteric wisdom of the ages. And it's all at our fingertips if we want it, and we develop the knowledge on how to acquire it digitally over the internet. Part of what I do is help people to understand how to effectively search the internet. That is a skill set that I teach in my How to Become the True Media seminar, which is going to be coming up this July of 2021. It's one of among many other technological skill sets that I show people how to do, so they don't have to depend on modern brick and mortar institutions, and they can just go ahead and learn how to find and download that information from an eclectic variety of online sources for themselves. That's how I respond to, what do we do about modern corruption in modern institutionalized so-called mystery tradition schools of teaching. I don't really think we need brick and mortar places like that any longer. That information is exploded out into the digital domain, and it's just a matter of acquiring the skill sets to find it and bring it to your own computer so that you could study and learn those materials at your own convenience.
Very well said, and I would fully agree with that. I think that most of the mystery schools or so-called mystery schools or the institutions of today are largely corrupted, and by and large they act as mostly an interface between municipality and the public, and they seem to be producing what I would call portico or porch masons, and largely just there for adornment and their personal ambition to raise in societal strata. And that's not what the schools are supposed to be about. And the idea that they ever had to become a secret society, um, obviously there was a benevolent need for that, but the time is now for this all to come out in the open. And I feel that I found an initiatory process through using the internet, and largely with your help, Mark, and I'm very grateful for that. And you gave me all of the other material and other references that I could further search that out and verify those things for myself. It was never about looking for a different belief system. It was always about a search for truth. And yes, we should consider that these institutions are used for clandestine operations now, and that they are infiltrated, and anybody's institution has been infiltrated largely, let's just say, by man's ambition, which is based in greed and avarice and personal gratification. So let's see what some of the other panel here has to say about that. Anybody else want to chime in on this? How about
I'd
you,
like to.
Will?
Okay.
I picked.
Yeah,
Anybody want to chime in on this?
I'll chime in real quick. So, the true mystery school is right there in the mirror looking at yourself and then, observing the outside world. Um, the traditions nowadays are just misdirection and just nets for consciousness. It's almost like, following a religion. It's the same thing. The internet is the library of Alexandria, you could say, nowadays, and it's just about you doing the work right in the mirror, that deep work, shadow work, and then putting into action and getting out there in the field to teach and spread the word.
Very well said. And I just, yeah, let me say that you, Will, you've really inspired me, because I met you in Anarchadelphia on my way out of town, and I just immediately knew that you had something special. And now I've seen some of your work, and I knew, and then it's verified that for me. And I'm just really encouraged by what you're doing and your colleagues. I think you guys are doing great work and put forward a great message. And I wanted to say one more thing about the internet. Um, what Mark is saying is absolutely true, because when I first started searching the internet, it wasn't that difficult for me to find the alternative information. And I found a lot of information that it's almost completely disappeared from the mainstream, and the censorship has just, it's full on now. I mean, and what that means with the censorship full on is that there's more happening now, more evil in the world now, more taking place now, but we're hearing less. So let's see if anybody else wants to chime in on this.
Yeah, can y'all hear me?
I'd like to say
Sean
something
or
quick.
Brandon?
Sorry, I'd like to jump in. If you join the brick and mortar, that's exactly where they want you. I mean, Mark joined the brick and mortar of Satanism, and they inducted him into the group of control. I mean, that's what joining a group does. So if you want to be free, don't join a group. That's all I gotta say.
Check. Can anyone hear me?
I think that's well said. And I've always had trouble with groupthink dynamics, and I've got some anecdotes I could tell, but let's bring in some of the other speakers just for now and get their voices on here.
Can you hear me, Doug?
I see Logan. Yeah, go ahead, Logan.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I agree with the general sentiment here as well. And this actually kind of ties into what I covered in my presentation. If you're seeking that out in that institution, you are again saying you want them to take you by the hand and spoon feed you the method and kind of just babysit you through that process. And then you're still kind of entrusting them to tell you all the secrets. That's how they lure you in, is the secrets and the power and all that. And so essentially you're kind of placing that in that monolithic position. And if they're misleading you, you don't really have anything else to cross-reference that with in terms of where you're taking that knowledge in from a broad range. It's kind of like unified there, centralized, and that's very dangerous.
I fully agree with that. um, we have to do the comparative eclectic study, and that takes a full scope of this an entire spectrum to really get it all on the table, and then compare it, because the truth discovery process is an individual process, and the other people that are trying to help teach, they can only help guide you on the path. They can't give you all the answers, but they can help you find the information that you will need to discover those answers for yourself.
I'd like to add a quick addendum to
Sure.
what you and both you and Logan just said, Douglas, and that is, it goes to the old axiom, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, but teach him to fish and you feed him forever. The idea here is that if you can show somebody how to go about getting the information on their own, they don't need to learn it from you. As you were saying earlier, Douglas, you heard some things from me from my podcast series, but then you went out and independently mined the internet on your own and studied those materials independently and autodidactically for yourself to do self verification of the information. And that is what I think really we really want to be putting out there for people, that no one has to take or accept this from any one of us. We'll all put the information out there in our ways that we know how, and our unique styles. But if people know the skill set of going out and acquiring this information online in a digital form, you can create a massive digital archive or library for yourself, and there could be no end to the material that you could study. And then obviously the goal of that is to awaken yourself fully to a point where you would then go out and help to teach others as well, and to point them in the direction where they could do that for themselves. So it's the whole difference, as what Sean was talking about. It's the whole difference between being a group joiner versus what we're trying to do is just point the way and show people how to do it for themselves and how to come by that information for themselves. So I think it's a very important distinction to make, and it's an important one.
I fully agree with that. But just so you know, I had a great chronology myself. I kind of started with the Zeitgeist and then went straight into Alex Jones and learned in the early Alex Jones days a lot of political science that is really not available now. It seems like the archives that he had have even disappeared. And I have archived some of it for myself. I was thinking about trying to do something with that, but
It's like it disappeared from his own mind when he
it
started
sure
calling for,
is.
I mean, he wanted, it's okay when martial law comes in. It's
Yeah.
fine because it's for Trump. Like, I mean, such bullshit. Oh my God.
And then
Anyway, so
I went into the astrotheology before I got to Mark Passio's work. Not to talk about you in the third party, but I went into the astrotheology before I got into your work, Mark, and I felt that that was so important because and you did give a good demonstration on the astrotheology, but I felt that I would have had to have left that work and then come back to it with more of the knowledge to really glean it in its fullness. And it was so much material. But yeah, I put in the full study on your work, and that doesn't mean I know it all, but I know a lot of it. That doesn't mean I can demonstrate it all for sure, but I made sure that it got burned in there pretty good, and I'm still working on it, and I always will, because there's so much there. It's enough, but I contrast that, and I'm doing some of the things that I've learned from some of the other authors, especially from what I found on the ARC drive. The ARC drive has been an invaluable resource for me. So I want to recommend that ARC drive to people because it's so important and such a great place to start. But yeah, the difficulty of getting the information now makes it even more crucial and critical because people that haven't been searching for truth, their algorithms are algorithms to find the things that have already been added to their profile and their preferences, and they're not finding, and most of the information is largely been completely obscured, and without the skill set it's more difficult to find the material now. So I would recommend that anybody that has a chance to sign up for Mark's How to Become the True Media course, because that's an invaluable resource that everybody should look into. And Mark has technical skills that we all can use and can benefit us in so many different ways in our own personal lives as well.
Douglas, I want to say that I definitely agree with your point that a lot of that information has been censored. If I had to try to put the arc together from scratch today, it would be a tall order. Thank God I archived the information when I did and did not just take it as read that that information would always be available online. And that is why I created the ARC offer to digitally archive that material to be able to make it available if such a time of censorship would arrive. And indeed it has. You're absolutely correct that that information is much more difficult to come by today than it was when I put it together over a decade ago. When I aggregated it, I should say, over a decade ago.
Truth Stream Media is talking about how they're even removing books from libraries. I mean, they're burning information. It's scary, and the internet is being like funneled, and people are, there's less and less availability for real information. And the fact that you did the arc is, I'm so thankful, and it's such a gift to the future.
I wanted to jump in and mention and stress the technological aspect, because this is why I started late. I was resistant to fully diving in and putting in that energy in the technological side. I wanted to go up in the mountains and garden, and then do pigeon carriers of truth, but that's not effective. But so you have to strike that balance, and that this is the battlefield. You have to learn that technological aspects. I took Mark's course and it was phenomenal. This was my first formal presentation, and I used a lot of the techniques and the attributes I learned in Mark's class, and it made my presentation smoother to create. So it highly recommended. It's a must for sure.
Well, let me just say, you're like a star student, man. You really picked up with the ball and ran with it, brother. Just phenomenal job on your presentation. I could tell that your technological skill set is really progressing tremendously. So, brilliant job, man.
Thank you.
That's the way to do it. That's really the way to do it.
Appreciate you, Mark. Right on.
I totally agree, Will. And I'd also like to add this kind of plays into a concept I like to call being a modern day wizard. You know, these are different times we're in. It's not the dark ages anymore, and you have to evolve with what's occurring in the world and use tools that can more effectively communicate and spread information. And like, again, usually just you get the image of the wizard up in his tower kind of reading books and smoking his pipe, and you know it's that, but in the modern day. And so he's planning his next podcast or his next presentation or whatever, same concept but done in the modern times. I think that's important.
You got to be a digital alchemist, right? Take a
You
piece
have
of
to stay
work
on the
and know how to
cutting edge.
transmute it to thousands and thousands of people.
Right, we have to stay on the cutting edge because fun and games aside, this is a war objectively, and we need to treat it as such. It's very serious in that way.
Yeah, the censorship that we've seen, and just especially, right before 2019, it's 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 the final death knell. And we have to recognize that, and we have to recognize how severe it is. And I mean, the idea of the book burning, I mean, why do they call their digital book storage Kindle? And my wife put her book out on Amazon, and come to find out that they didn't even notify her, but with the events of 2019 and then the restrictions that followed in 2020, they were actually publishing her book in a smaller form. It was still a quality form, but it wasn't the same product, and she didn't even know. So they were just printing the book to order and not even didn't even notify us. We actually found out from somebody who had bought the book, and she'd have to tell you the whole story, but I was very alarmed when I heard that, I gotta say. So it's who else do we got here on the panel? I see. um I'm trying to find some questions to bring in here, and I had one earlier. um Lots of compliments here, but somebody had a really strange question. I wanted to see if we could field this one together. um Trying to see if I can find that. It's back in the beginning of the chat.
Was it the Kubrick and moon landing question? Is that the one you're going
Yeah,
for?
I think that one was specifically for Sean.
Yeah, Sean, somebody said, can you please share your opinion on Kubrick and the moon landing hoax?
Well, I believe that Kubrick did help them in whatever, because they helped Kubrick, and that's evident with the Zeiss lenses um, for the Barry Lyndon, and the people that were working on the moon landing. Apollo were like credited in 2001 for being part of the film, and like, it's all very convenient to whitewash what they're really doing. You know what I mean? And that's like what Hollywood does, and that's what government is. It's a big show for the public, and that's what they were doing. You know what I mean? Whether it was Kubrick specifically, I can't say, but I think that Widener did a very good thing where, I mean, his where he caught that it's all front screen projection, and he did a Kubrick's Odyssey, where it's like he does a whatever. He has a presentation, and you can find it, Kubrick's Odyssey, and he explains that whole idea, and I think he's on point with that. Some of his other things that he speculates, they might be a little. I don't go on board with everything, but Widener makes a very good case, and I I am. I mean, just the visual elements of like why would, if there's 1/6 the amount of gravity on the moon, why are they bouncing in slow motion? You know what I mean? Why wouldn't it be fast? Why wouldn't it be 6 times faster a bounce? It doesn't make logical sense, but it's like a visual mechanism for fooling the people watching into thinking, oh yeah, it's like a fucking, it's like a magic trick. Like, this is, the magician does this with his hand, and you fucking, oh, that makes sense. That's it's a big camera show, and I don't I don't know if we went to the moon or not. I'm not the one to answer that, but I do think that it was a big camera show, and I think that Kubrick is the best one that he could choose, and they already had him on salary. You know what I mean? And he was an up and coming rising star, and he wanted to make a name for himself, and he wanted to have a real career, and you know what I mean? It only makes sense.
I think the strangest thing about Kubrick's whole career was the timing of his death.
Right.
But I think that's very well said the way you put it. Yeah, it's like whatever they're doing in space is not what they're showing us. I think that we can be sure of.
Yes.
And as far as what's possible in space, I don't think we really have any legitimate straight answers on that.
Right. And they wouldn't show us any. I mean, they wouldn't give us to view. They wouldn't give us that. You know what I'm saying? Like they, if
Absolutely.
they're occultists, you know, like they're not going to tell us this just to have it on TV. Like why? Why would they tell us that shit? So obviously, you know,
I see. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, obviously, it's like it's a big magician camera show, and like I said before, we'll keep going on.
That's exactly well said, because that's
Thank you.
what it is. When you're working with cameras, it is a magician's trick.
Right.
And the director has a bag full of techniques that he uses to guide your eyes and make you see and believe what he wants you to see and believe. I see we got Brandon in the chat room. Is Brandon in there still? Can we get Brandon on here? Okay, let me get you. Here's the question. This is one of the questions I found in the Q&A. And I'm going to ask Logan if he'll take this one on to start with, and then maybe we can all chime in on it. It's kind of an astrology question. It's kind of a bizarre question, but it's Elijah Dooley asks, in your opinion, when humans finally start populating Mars, if they deem successful in the distant future, how do you think Earth would come into play as a planet in their birth chart, being Mars their birth planet? And then parentheses, first person to be born on Mars, theoretically, if and when that happens. What do you think about that, Logan?
Do you mean Brian? He is the expert astrologer.
Okay. I guess I was addressing the wizard factory in general.
I mean,
And
I love astrology and I do aspire to know more, but Brian is definitely the one to ask.
okay. Is Brian in here with us?
Should be.
How can I get Brian on here? Does anybody else want to take a crack at it? Because I will. I mean, that's the only question I have here in the Q&A that I see. We answered most of the questions from yesterday, and it looks like we have a lot of informed viewers here that are mostly just thanking all the speakers and giving praise and appreciation. But yeah, my take on that is until we end slavery here, you know, you can expect that any planet that would be populated by this control system would probably be just set up as a prison colony. You know, and they're already turning this planet into a Death Star. So, you know, they probably want to move that off world if they could, and move that prison population off world. And whole point being is that we have to end slavery before we think about our future endeavors, because whatever our future endeavors are not going to amount to anything other than bondage and servitude without learning the moral laws of nature. That would be my take on it.
Seems like if they were gonna build a prison, though, they should build it on Saturn.
They're building the prison in our minds. I mean, we gotta we gotta guard that before we start guarding. They're gonna be up in Saturn or not.
What's your take on this, Mark?
Well, I'm not I don't have a really strong suit in astrology per se, but I would definitely agree with your contention that before concerning ourselves with other places, times, or circumstances, that the moral condition that humanity exists in has to change first and foremost before anything else, before concerning ourselves with really any other endeavors. If we're not free, um, our lives become reduced in value, and we're not really living to our full potential at all, or really even we're not living to any potential whatsoever. um, the first and foremost thing that we have to concern ourselves with is ending the condition of human slavery, and the only way we can do that is understanding objective morality under natural law, understanding our own sovereignty, and help to morally educate our fellow human beings so that we can bring our species up out of this immoral condition and end slavery on this planet once and for all, for sure. I wish I had something more to say on the, astrological aspects of it. But again, that's not really my strong suit when it comes to occult studies. I'm sure, if Brian were here, he could chime in on that. I don't think he's in the chat right now, but I definitely agree with your contention, Douglas, that our focus needs to be primarily on the here and now and on moral education for sure.
That kind of brings up something interesting for me. I recently attended the Float Fest down here in Texas, and it's kind of more crypto oriented, and a lot of anarchists were there. And the person that threw the event was very pro like space exploration, stuff like that. And I found that interesting too, because the sentiment was very like, oh, if we could just explore space, then and eyes on the stars, then humans would just come together and it would be kumbaya. And yeah, obviously it doesn't work that way, but it kind of reminded me of some of what you were talking about, Mark, when kind of classifying the different anarchists, in that they're putting the emphasis, the foundation on something other than the principles, the fundamentals, like it's the economical system, or whatever have you. They're just kind of changing that around, or technology is going to save us, or space exploration is going to save us. Same kind of thing. Any of it is some kind of grasping at straws for a way to not take and hold on to that personal responsibility.
That's exactly right. It's projection of what they may be interested in themselves. It's a form of escapism. They're looking to get rid of something they don't like, or move in the direction towards something that they do like or prefer, but none of it hits the heart of the matter, which is morality. In none of those forms of so-called anarchism, wrap the word in double quotes, as I said, are they really focused on objective morality and bringing our collective human behavior into alignment with it under natural law. And without doing that, there can be no anarchy. So yeah, I fully agree with you. These are people who are looking to escape in some way, or as you said, like likening it to looking toward the stars instead of being present, fully present in the here and now, here on earth at this point in time, focused on the actual condition that is taking place, and even more importantly, the causal factors for that condition, and how we can understand those causal factors from the plane of causality, and then work in our mind to change what we think, what we believe, and therefore how we behave, so that we can improve that condition here on earth in the here and now. So yeah, absolutely well said, Logan. And it's a great point as to how the thinking in certain group dynamics goes completely awry, and people get onto completely wrong causal factors, or not even causal factors at all, but just wrong lines of axiomatic thought regarding what the problem is, and what we have to do, and things we have to arrange, or new systems we have to create, when none of that is what's going to get us out of this situation that we are in. It's all about morality, understanding the objective difference between right and wrong behavior, and aligning our behavior to it as a species.
Very well said. I wanted to say that my screen just changed there. Man will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing his own soul. And largely what the modus operandi seems to be is them setting up carnival tents all around us and just trying to lure us away from this present moment awareness and this understanding of the moral objective law in nature. And the whole idea is in in the flesh, or head in the clouds, boots on the ground, or feet on the ground. That's what I'm trying to say, is the spiritual warrior with the knowledge in hand to bring in true freedom and the ability to help reach and teach others, and protect that knowledge and reach as many others as we can with that knowledge. So I'm getting a little tired here, but I got a question coming in, and let's see what we can do with this question, because this is a good one, or we're going to have fun with it. How do you guys feel about intuition and common sense? This is Paul Nation. How do you guys feel about intuition and common sense? He says, and then he asks, they are real, and some, or he says that they are real, and some people know this information without studying. So anybody want to chime in on that one?
I'll speak to it first and then let other people chime in. I agree. I think that those things are real dynamics in our world. I think intuition is one of the functions of particularly the right brain, human brain hemisphere, and it can be developed and honed. And people can, what has been referred to as thin slicing information. And developing the ability to hone in on the veracity of something um, without necessarily doing 100% full left brain processing. Now, I'm not going to say that that should be relied on entirely uh, to determine the truthfulness of any given field of information or endeavor, but I do think that it is a dynamic that can assist in that endeavor of discovering truth. So it's something that definitely exists as a human ability and capacity. Should it be relied on entirely as the only method of discovery? No. Uh, but it can be honed and developed, as I said, to assist in understanding what is going on. Common sense, of course, is another thing that is absolutely real in the world. I liken conscience to common sense. The knowing together, literally, that's what the word conscience means from the Latin prefix con, meaning together or with in Latin, and then the Latin verb sciere, which is where we get the word science. Sciere in Latin is a verb meaning to know or to understand. So putting them together, common knowledge, common sense, to know together. What are we endeavoring to know together? The objective difference between right and wrong behavior under natural law. So absolutely, intuition and common sense are very real. And, that's the way I look at them. And I think, especially intuition is a tool in the toolbox, the utility toolbox for understanding what is going on in our world. I think it's an ancillary or adjunct tool regarding people not being able to know this without doing any study, just from intuitive knowing. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm saying most people aren't going to rely on that solely as the means of understanding. They're going to have to delve into it in some form of a stepwise progression or somewhat scholarly, research-based manner, eclectically gathering information sources from other people, from works that they have put out and researched, and amassing that information as the grammar step of the trivium method, and then progressing forward from there. So again, I see it as an adjunct or ancillary method that can assist us as far as intuition is concerned.
I fully agree with that. I see it as a connection with right brain, which is a connection to heart, the heart energy. But I recognize that it represents a polarization or potential polarization. And based on my experience trying to learn some of this knowledge, I know how much work it takes. And it seems, your mantra that religion is the main root of the problem, which defined as erroneous belief systems, is what we have to deal with. And what am I trying to say? We have to know truth ideally, and that takes knowledge. So I'm inclined to think that you could go through life and probably experience a good life. I think the word common sense is ambiguous. And, this is what I'm trying to get to is without the understanding of the natural law, it doesn't seem like we really can really understand the true underlying purpose of all the other dogmatic ideologies, or what have become erroneous ideology. It's the natural law is what worked for me, that gave me the key to really be able to understand the ideas. And that was something that I really had to work hard on to learn. However, I did recognize it as a codification of the intuitive qualities that I had, which were strong. For me, I was more of a right brainer, and it was, I felt that that was a little bit easier to come into balance from that. But it also took a lot of knowledge to get enough balance in my left brain to get my right brain to start functioning. And I'm thinking of the movie Being There with Peter Sellers. He kind of just is an impartial observer, but he seems to be totally connected to his intuition. And then he ends up, in the upper echelons of, and he has this great life, and he just, he meets all these important people, and he goes clear up into the highest echelons of social strata, and he's totally trusted, and he seems completely impartial is the way I remember it. And I can think of a few other movie allegories that have examples of that, but let's see what the other people here have to
Um,
say.
I wanted to say that intuition is definitely a thing, and look in nature, look at the way that birds react to a statue of an owl, and the way that we are afraid of snakes and spiders. Information can be passed down through our genetics, I guess, and that many, like, it it's apparent that it exists, and just look into nature, and yes, and you can work with it if you can tune in with it. And it when you find things in nature that resonate with that, you can hear it sing within you, and it's true.
Yeah, I'll speak on intuition. It's a line of communication. You know, the self and nature were one, and there's a field. I think Rupert Sheldrake calls it the morphogenic field, the field of information that's all around us. That's how your dog knows when you're coming home, like 20 minutes before you actually get there. Humans have this as well, and and it can be developed. The word
Yeah.
intuition means insight, to look at or consider. So obviously you can get polarized. So just take it as information, but put attention to it, and notice when that intuitive feeling comes in, and use it as information whenever you're going through the trivium process of life.
Think about twins. Twins can communicate with each other in fantastic ways that people science can't understand. I mean, they have a connection. The intuition is like a key to that. I mean, uh, that seems like it applies.
I consider it the seventh sense, the sixth being memory, the seventh being intuition, and then the eighth, imagination. Something that I ponder on.
Nice.
Uh,
I
wasn't
like
wasn't
that.
wasn't there an experiment where they took like some primates and put them on one island, and then they took some primates and put them on another island, and then on the one island they they spent a long time teaching the particular primates a particular technique or a trick, and when the whole population had learned the trick, they went back to the other island, and then all the primates there knew how to do it. I don't know if you ever heard of that, and I don't remember. I think I picked that up off of Alex Jones way back in the early days, but I remember hearing that. I was intrigued by it. I never really went too much further with it, but it made sense to me. The idea of the 51 and the aggregate shift into the consciousness. But I really want to put the emphasis on knowledge, because for me it's been a lot of hard work and learning about what these things are. And I think primarily you could get through life with intuition, but you would suffer hard knocks, probably have a low impact on the environment, but you'd probably have to have some hard knocks, but you'd probably get through life. And this is just speculative a little bit, but ideally we have to learn and grow, and we certainly wouldn't be able to really teach without without the knowledge of the skill sets and the understanding of the workings of the psychology. To me, it's all about psychology. So
I'd love to chime in here too on the great topic of intuition. Uh, yeah, for me, it's definitely just one form of intelligence. It's valid in its own right, but should be used in conjunction and integrated. Um, Sean, you mentioned animals. That's what I was going to say too. Is that, for example, animals have the capacity to actually be moral and good, but they don't know that. They don't have that choice. They're still acting on instinct, or if you could say intuition in that way. That's kind of how I relate that. And also, as a musician, I've always felt a natural inclination for music, but on that journey, I can acknowledge that there was a very definite unlocking once I started actually learning the theory or the science behind that. I had the gift already, but when I took that knowledge in, it took me to a whole new level and kind of like was a catalyst for that exponential growth. So to me, knowledge and intuition are kind of like the left and right foot, that one gives way to the other one. You can't have too much of one. Like you have to take in some knowledge, but then integrate it and apply it, and then that becomes kind of part of your subconscious processing. So
One thing that I've noticed personally, developing my intuition, when I get a really strong intuitive uh, response, the voice after it is usually ego. So it's good to take it as it is. And Logan, what you were saying, that's phenomenal. I dig it.
right, let those two have a conversation for a minute. Let them just kind of like, it's like the parent just listening to the two kids kind of talking and let him work it out and see where it goes, because sometimes, like, it depends.
Yeah.
my personal experience is coming from a right brain imbalance. I would consider an intuitive quality. Um, I, I'm a late bloomer all the way around, and I'm a musician too. And I even started playing music late in my teens, and then I ended up, playing on stage shortly after that. So I really had to learn how to do something really fast, and I never really had any problem being on a stage, but I had trouble learning how to play an instrument and understanding music theory. But it was, I pretty much rebelled fully against all knowledge, which was a really dumb thing to do. But I was lucky enough to go back to college in my 40s, because I'm the old guy here. And there was the right brain or the left brain development that I got from going back to college that brought my right brain into more of a balance, because I think of meditation as more of a coming to the middle. And I kind of think that a right brain imbalance would pull you farther from center, because you're already going more so into the intuitive. And I think the left brain propensities would be probably better remedied by the idea of the meditation. In other words, if I spent all my time meditating after that much time in my life in that right brain imbalance, I'd be in really bad shape right now. But yeah, anybody else want to talk on this?
I actually have some advice for someone. It's a little off topic than what we were talking about, but I think it's important for communication, because everyone knows when you're talking to friends, family members, just people in general, it's tough. It can be tough, but a method that I found that works pretty good is the Socratic method. So it's a method of asking questions to stimulate critical thinking. And is you focus on rights and morality. And, for instance, I ask someone, can I go rob my neighbor? Well, no. Okay. Can I hire my friend? No. Can I hire a group of people and call myself government? And when you're asking them these questions, they'll start to fumble within their own logic. And it's a really good method. I think Larkin Rose talks about it too in his Candles in the Dark, the Socratic method. And it's easy because people always want to be defensive and be emotional when you're have an emotional reaction when you're trying to present information. but asking them questions, you're kind of directing the conversation. And
It lets them lead to their
yeah,
own cognitive dissonance. You're
exactly.
letting them walk right up to it, and then they are kind of faced with that choice of acknowledging it. But most of the time, they will like do the most absurd acrobatics to squirm out of the way.
Yeah.
It's actually really amazing to watch.
When my partner John and I, we do education on the streets and we engage with people. Most people want to take the conversation and just take it left field, get it completely out of bounds on the conversation. So we have to hone them in and bring it back down to natural rights or morality. We stick to those basics. That's the foundation, and that's a good place to stay focused on and centered. Because it's real easy to get off topic and get into all kinds of crazy shit. So, just a little advice.
Especially in these crazy times. You know, it's tough to keep people focused on what you're actually talking about. 'Cause people
Well,
want to
yeah.
go nuts. You know what I mean? They yell in your face because all this mind control programming poured in all day, every day, and they just want to explode. They don't know what to do with it. And
Well,
if you can help them figure it out for themselves instead of them just trying to yell at you, you know, go ahead. I'm sorry.
oh no, sorry to interrupt.
I'm yelling at you now.
Well,
Go ahead,
most of
man.
the time they want to externalize it. They're looking for the external control. So when you're doing the Socratic method, you're talking about rights, you're bringing it more internally because you're asking them questions on morality and what they think of it. So it kind of hits home. And you'll drop hard seeds on them, and I think that's what we're doing. We're way showers and planting seeds, and then follow up on those for a little bit of watering if possible.
Great. Okay, so Tyler's brought 3 more questions in. So how about we try to field these and then we'll try to wrap it up. And it's been a big marathon for me, and I'm sure we'd all like to kick back a little bit. And it's just, I got a lot to celebrate. I mean, this has been the greatest thing I've ever been part of, and I'm sure you guys would like to get back to it too. But let's try to field these 3 questions and then maybe try to wrap it up. How's that sound? First question, probably a good one here for Will. Is it practical to teach natural law to children in a stepwise progression? Any tips or advice on this matter, James Cordner?
Oh, what 100%. 100%. My daughter is about to be 8, and the Give to Nature book is so good for kids because you have the visual aspect, but it allows parents to elaborate. The most important, you can take your child out into the outside world and show them. For instance, my daughter and I, we garden, so I can explain the principles, and she can see the cycles and all this kind of stuff that she can relate to on a very practical level. And absolutely 100%, I highly recommend it. And when you're talking about self-ownership, there's a level of communication. Being a parent, you're not going to use huge words. You got to make it more simple, but they'll understand. You can use a toy, right? It's like, this is your toy, okay, can't take it, and you get the idea. But start them as young as possible and don't lie to them. Tell them the truth.
Who else wants to chime in on that one?
I'll jump in on that. I agree with what Will said. Start as early as possible. Give children credit for being able to recognize truth when it is spoken to them. So don't shelter them from the information. What I would recommend is, as Will said, use a visual aid such as a child's book like Indica's book, which is fantastic. Or simply make notes from a presentation yourself as the parent, and then make a very, very simple outline using very simple concepts and easy to understand wording, and then just take them through it one step at a time on their own terms. and if you want to even find some images to show them while you explain to them what you're explaining, visual aids will often help hold their attention. But the main thing to keep in mind, as Will said, is just be open and honest with them, go slowly, and do not, you know, hold back in insofar as like thinking that they will not be able to grasp it or understand it even at a very early age. The more you speak to them in plain, easy to understand terms, and just repeat it to them to the extent that it is necessary until they grasp it, you'll be effective, and just have confidence as a parent that you'll be able to communicate what you want them to learn regarding morality and natural law, and then just spend the time. You know, take the time and the attention to actually sit down with the child and do that and go over it until you feel that they have a firm understanding of it. And I think it will absolutely work. And I think it's something that they'll probably actually appreciate because they have probably never heard that from any other human being, and it's a new, probably a new concept to them, and they'll be very curious about it and will probably ask a lot of questions. So it absolutely can be done, and you know, that's my take on approaching that topic.
I actually can't wait for the questions myself. I'm like waiting patiently for him to get old enough to start asking me these questions. I'm so excited, you
Well,
know.
that's what I was gonna
And
say. Everybody dreads the why stage. That's like the
yeah,
golden opportunity.
yeah,
Kids
yeah,
asking why. It's a chance for you to even say, "Well, I don't know. Let's go find out."
exactly.
You
And the
know,
gardening thing, what you said, Will, is great because it gives you all the possibilities. Like everything is there and you can go touch it and it'll, you know what I mean? It's a tangible thing that you can show her. And like, I mean, with the, if I'm thinking about like, if I was to draw an outline for my son, he wouldn't like want to like just sit and look at the paper. You know what I mean? I think that like gardening is like, it gives you the ability to like talk about anything, all principles, or I mean, because like nature is there, you can talk about anything and relate it, or some other thing that you do. If you are well spoken enough, you can relate anything to the principles that are important that you're trying to teach. I mean, you start with the principles, and then stepwise progression from there. You know what I mean? Like the
absolutely.
principle of self ownership and do no harm, take no shit, all this, you know, and that moves out and builds upon, and that, like that's the core. And just like what we had to do, and we stripped away all the shit that we knew, we had to bring it to that again and start there and have a new core. Except we're starting with a fresh core. You know, we don't have to strip the shit away. They get it like all these years ahead of time. So like my son is gonna be well ahead of where I'm at by the time I'm this age. I hope if he listens. You know, I just can't wait. I'm very excited.
My daughter is one of my biggest teachers. She teaches so much about myself because it's like a little mini me. It's a reflection. I can see characteristics that she picked up from me or her mom, and so it's really, I think it's good. Mark nailed it on what he was saying, and it's good to see your children as equals and have that student teacher relationship, and then have fun with it.
I really like the idea of the gardening, and you know what that to me emphasizes is the time and attention that the children really need. And yeah, on a cautionary note, I think that treating the children like they don't have the capacity to understand conditions them for this religion of authority in their adulthood. And I think we have to really be cautious about that, because that's how we're really being treated when we look at the mainstream media. Is the, you know, they're, the whole concept of government is that we need perennial parents from cradle to grave, because we never learned how to deal with truth, and we're probably never even given the opportunity, and then come to find out none of the adults in most cases had it in the first place. But I liked Mark Passio's was good advice for me. Of course, you know, all my children are grown now, but I could have used that advice back in the day when he said go slow, because I was a little bit, you know, I wasn't going to hold anything back from them. And I had a lot of work on myself I probably needed to do, but I've always tried to treat them as equals and with the capacity to, and that paid off later on, but it was a struggle going through it without the knowledge. And I ended up taking parenting classes to help get through that. But you know, it's a difficult job, and I think the thing that children need the most is ways to connect with their familiar bond or their parents and their family, but they need to be treated like they have as much capacity. And based on what we see in the adult world, quote unquote, um, and the level of tyranny that we're facing now, I mean, what adult, you know, would it could actually say that the children can't process the information better than they can?
I agree
So
that they need to be respected. I mean, they are souls just like us. They just happen to be in a younger body, you know, and they need to be treated with the same respect and, you know, given the same uh, ability and the same, you know, give them the knowledge too. You know what I mean? Even though they might be too young or whatnot, you know, do your best and you know, treat them with the same respect that you would an adult. You know, they just happen to be in a young body. You know, I totally agree with you, Douglas.
You want them to figure it out on their own. You're the facilitator, but they need to integrate it, not just memorize it. You know,
right.
and regurgitate just information. They actually need to. It's got to be something that they can interact with and experience. So
That's just what I was going to say is ultimately, if you are their model, then you are to be that master magician that's applying your imagination and my imagination to create those experiences for them, for which they can actually see the evidence of those lessons for themselves. They don't need to believe you. You don't need to impose anything on them. You use your creative ability to create experiences for them that are safe but challenging, that perfect balance that creates flow state. And then that's going to be the best thing you can do for them, and give them that care and attention to do that, to put that creative force to their benefit.
You know,
even
there's a
for
lot I
kids that
could
are
say
older.
about this. Go ahead.
No, I was just last point I was going to say. Even if you have kids that are older, they're grown. You're still the parent because you can still lead by example. So good point, Logan.
And a lot of us grow up and end up, you know, trying to raise our parents from that point. But you know, we all have information that we can share, and the whole point is to get into a state of growth and maintain a state of growth. Children need a lot of affirmation and they need a lot of attention, but you don't want to give them too much. But one thing I want to say about this is, yes, children are the future and they deserve to have a bright future. However, reaching the children is not the answer, because the children did not create this problem and they certainly cannot be expected to fix this problem. So ideally, it's the adults that we got to reach, and they are calcified and doubled down in their egos. So that's largely why it's called the great work. You know, at this stage in the game, it's the great work and then some, because those are the people that we have to reach. And it's not really an organic, it's a lot of unlearning, like Mark said. And is parenting is a difficult thing to do, but I mean, my best advice to any parent out there is that give them as much attention and time as you can, and give them the affirmation that they need, but not too much. You know, you don't want to put them on a pedestal, but you know, you want to let them know they feel appreciated. And then, like I say, you know, treating them with the confidence that they can learn anything that we know, you know, over a given amount of time. Some things you're not going to learn immediately, and some things have prerequisites, but that's also part of the building the trust bond. So I think that's important. So looks like we got Brandon trying to get in here. I think we got one more. Oh yeah, we
Yeah,
got one
there's
more
someone,
question. It's kind
David
of a different.
Edwards wants to ask a live question. So, David, you can go ahead and try to ask that now if you're available to try to ask that. You're off
Oh, can
mute.
you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, cool.
I-
Yeah, I've got a question for Mark. Can Mark hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I can.
Hi, Mark. First of all, I'd like to thank you so much for teaching me about natural law. You've changed my life, man.
Thank you, David.
In return, I'd like to teach you something and ask you a couple of questions about it. In your podcast, I think it was somewhere in the 60s, but I can't find it through lots of searching. You mentioned about the Great Pyramid and the chakra system of the chambers in the Great Pyramid maybe being a ascension, instruction, and a record of the timeline of humanity. Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you remember?
Yes, it's one of the theories of the method of construction of the pyramid. What may have been a encoding built into it, as I talked about in this presentation. There is an occult decoding of the pyramid as a timeline of life and about a learning and growth in spirituality in our life experience. And that's what I decoded toward the end of this presentation at S.E.E.D 4.
Yeah. You ready to have your mind blown, Mr. Passio?
Okay.
I'm sure you're aware that the speed of light in metric is indicated at the apex due to its latitude north in decimal. Yes.
I've heard about this. Yes.
Are you also aware that the speed of light in metric is indicated at the base of the Great Pyramid, in so much as if you draw a circle around it and a circle inside it and subtract the smaller circumference from the larger circumference, you're left with the speed of light in metric?
Okay.
So you've got the heavenly vector at the top and the earthly vector at the bottom, yes? The whole principle of ancient philosophy was to connect heaven and earth, whether that was the the plane of causation being the mental, energetic, spiritual plane, or the frequency, the high frequency and the low frequency, or whether it was metaphysical and physical. Well, how do you join the apex of the Great Pyramid to the base of the Great Pyramid? You look at the stones. Now, in the Great Pyramid, it's made up of over 200 layers of stones. And these stones, although they're all of different sizes, are consistent in height or thickness throughout each layer, okay?
Okay.
If you if you convert those stones, those layers to a pattern and mark out the layers which are over a meter thick or a meter high, as it were, then the pattern that you're left with corresponds and correlates exactly with the electromagnetic spectrum. So you've got so you've got so you've got light referenced 3 times in the Great Pyramid, which connects heaven and earth, connects the apex and the base. Now, the visible light spectrum in the electromagnetic spectrum, the position of that is positioned to the 5th chamber, the unopened chamber, which you might call the throat chakra in the chakra system of the Great Pyramid. Now, bearing in mind that we're trying to connect heart energy and brain energy. The only way to do that in the chakra system is through the throat, because you've got the 4th chakra of the heart and the 6th chakra and 7th maybe of the brain, the mind. And the way to do that is to connect them is through the throat, the 5th chakra. Yeah.
So could that be a possible reference to coming into a vibration of truth and speaking it to others? Is that
absolutely, sir? That's 100% what it's about. Yes, sir. I'm glad you understand completely and are aware of this. I've been told by a few of you gatekeepers that you wouldn't be interested, but it's very important.
Definitely email me about it. I'd like to look into what you're referencing there a little bit further. But yeah, it's how we interact with and express ourselves to others, and the most important way of doing that is through speech that is in alignment with truth. It's what
Absolutely,
I've
sir.
made my life about, and it's what I hope other people will take up as their personal work and their personal journey. I mean, look at this phenomenal lineup of speakers, people who are reaching others with their voice. That's all coming from that throat chakra, and I love what Regina did earlier in the guided meditation, talking about the throat chakra as a mechanism of speaking truth and activating courage within ourselves. So many people out there may even know a lot of this information, but are haven't developed the courage to speak it, especially publicly or online. And hopefully, an event like this will serve as a mechanism of inspiring people to open up their not only their heart chakra for care for truth, but for the throat chakra for being able to develop the courage to speak it publicly out there so that other people may learn it, because everybody has their own unique way of doing that. So I think it's a great point that you brought up there, David.
Thank you, Mark. I'd just like to say that the speed of light at the apex and the speed of light at the base aren't my discoveries, but the correlation of the electromagnetic spectrum and all of the spiritual technology and analysis that comes from it is my discovery. I've been trying to get through to you for a year. You've got an email from me in your email box with the attachment of the diagram explaining, showing what I've just told you. And
I have not seen that, so send it again. I get so much email. It may have gone into a spam folder, been interpreted as spam. Just send it again, and I will definitely check it out. I'll get back to you.
Okay, I've also sent you a friend request on Facebook. I know you don't use it an awful lot, and Leah tends to look at it. But I've been trying to get hold of you for the past 6 months, a year at least, and it's really difficult with your gatekeepers to get through to you personally. And I'm so pleased to have got through tonight, and that you're interested in it, because we've got to talk, sir, about this. It's we can use this to enlighten the world. The Great Pyramid is not only a record of humanity and a instruction manual on the microcosmic and macrocosmic level. It's also a consciousness generator and an ascension machine, and it's sent to us for this purpose at this time, to generate the consciousness and enlighten the world. We can use it as a teaching maquette to enlighten the world, basically, to re-illuminate, as one of the speakers was talking about, re-illumination. Which one was that? I can't remember now. I'm sorry. It's,
that was Nate.
Yeah, that's
David,
it, Nate Cap. Yeah,
thank you. I think
brilliant,
it's
brilliant, Nate. That was.
I
I'm
think it's
sorry, Mark. It's
no, it's
5:30 in the
okay.
morning.
Yeah, I think
over
it's a
here in
great
the
point
UK.
that you brought up. Definitely, social media like Facebook is not the best way of getting a hold of me, because it's just, there's so much there, and I really don't, as you said, I don't use it extremely a lot. I use it pretty sparingly. Just resend the email, and I will check it out, and we can maybe have a discussion on it at some point. So thank you.
Thank you very much, David, for the great information and the great questions. And yeah, Mark, I really loved your ascension analysis on the inner chambers of the Great Pyramid. I think that's very important information. And
Thank you. I wanted to do something, interject something that was kind of special for this presentation. And, obviously that, theory or decoding has been out there for quite some time, but I felt like I wanted to, add a little bit of a special analysis there, that connects with the topic for this presentation.
Yeah, I love that part. It was really great. And it's very important information for us all to understand. So I'm looking forward to getting back to that material and working with it more myself. So we got a couple more questions, guys, and then we had a live question. So that's really great. Looks like we got a couple of the panel members having trouble getting in. So let's try to field these questions and then wrap it up. How's that sound? So this is for all of us here. This is a good question. He says, James McCormick wants to know, what would the path for integration into a society based in natural law be for those who are beneficiaries or enforcers of the current paradigm. Anybody want to take that one? I'll read the question again if I need to. Yes, he wants to understand how that would look in the transition, you know.
My question would be, are we already talking about natural law being established in society and what it would be like for people who, are coming from the old paradigm, or I guess he means in the transition now, in the world as it is now, how would we get those who are beneficiaries or enforcers of the current way that the world is to move toward an understanding of natural law and give
Yeah,
up their evil ways, so to speak. I think it's very, very, very difficult. That is what the great work is to actually do. And, I mean, I'll start an answer to this. And again, people chime in as they wish. But I think really, if somebody's very tied, it depends on how egoically calcified and tied to their entrenched belief system they are. And I think what's really one of the only ways, unless something very unique happens to that in that person's life experience, is they're going to have to become uncomfortable and suffer. They're going to have to experience suffering. Suffering is uh not necessarily what we could call always evil or negative. Sometimes suffering is there to awaken us, to push us into levels of discomfort until we abandon a wrong, erroneous and dogmatic and calcified belief system. This is how it happened for me. I wasn't at all really a beneficiary of the existing system, but I was a pusher of it. I was an ideologue of it, you could say, and I had to suffer until my ego brought me to a place where it was either ascend or die. It was either come out of that state or physically you're not going to live too much longer. And it brought me into the depths of total despair and depression earlier in my life until, I finally had to acknowledge that the problem, lay in my own thinking. And I think that's what's going to have to happen for many, many, many people. Unfortunately, it's a sad fact of the matter, but I think really unfortunately, one of the only paths out of that mindset for people like that is going to be to suffer to such an uncomfortable extent that they finally have to realize that the problem lies in their thinking and they have to abandon that way of thinking and that paradigm. But the only question is, how much suffering is that going to take?
anybody else want to chime in on that one?
Yeah, it brought up for me kind of the thinking that comes along with the statist mentality. I'm not saying the person that asked the question is taking this mentality, but it is uh, what is still kind of left in the programming when coming out of that is, this question of like, how would this work or how would that work, as if there has to be one way that everybody does things, right? And we all just kind of like have to do that. That's what the current system is. So I already see things kind of shifting almost to what like Thomas Sheridan talks about as a parallel society, where people are kind of just seeing that the system isn't working and trying to peacefully exit and just go do their own thing. And at some point, we'll see how long that can coexist. Right now, that's kind of happening more and more. And then we'll just see, like, it's usually the diseased mind virus, the religionists that can't tolerate freedom coexisting with their, you know, enslaved mentality, and are the ones that are going to go and try to like disrupt that, not the other way around. But that, does that make sense as far as like the whole integration thing, you know, instead of just everybody just kind of like making this one big transformation into something different, it's going to be like a lot of sharding. I think a lot of fractalization of society into different kind of paradigms of people seeking their own form of freedom and trying to live that out, and then like seeing who else is doing what and like trying different things, that sort of thing. That's sort of what I envision.
Who else wants to chime in on that one?
Yeah, I agree with Logan. It's putrefaction, right? It's the breaking down, and people are gonna clutch onto that and hang on to that for dear life, to death. I believe, you know, it'll get that bad for some people, but um, ultimately it will kind of just break away and fade off. Hopefully, that's what we're going for. We're going for evolution. So that's on their journey, their soul journey. That's, you know, that's why the shadow work is so important to do, to face it, to face those the dark insecurities and the skeletons in the closet.
Yeah, I'm thinking as part of the great work, and that's what I see the light workers doing, is trying to facilitate that with the least amount of suffering as possible. And it's those that are calcified in that ego that are taking the path of the way Mark put it, the path of maximum pain. So the light workers, part of our great work is to try to minimize that maximum pain, and that's where the cohesion, or the that's where the friction is. So and I just, I think this is a good opportunity to make a point about social Darwinism, because a lot of people can understand social Darwinism on the premise of it, but I want to explain it that it's part of how we fall low, because people want that petty power, and they'll allow themselves to fall lower as long as they come out on top of somebody else, and then can look down and feel better about themselves and their disposition, all the way to the point where we want to put our children to be raised by the state in public school. And I don't think you can fall much lower than that, but I think it's all a result of the social Darwinism and the idea of having a leg up. So I think that the social Darwinism translates as having a leg up, and that's the power that people feared to relinquish, or their entire ego identification is built on top of, but also that's how we fall low.
Yeah, plus, you know, it with natural law, right? You're going to get what you give. So on the aggregate level, this isn't going to last for too long before the rubber band snaps back. And I'm saying this like in a bad way. It's not gonna work out well, but there's only so much nature will take before it comes crushing back down. Um, so
That's interesting you just said about natural law, knowing that you're going to get what you give. That's a proactive mentality, right? Proactive. I'm going to put this out and then it's going to come back to me. Most everyone else who is stuck in the satanic mindset, they're in the fear-based reactive mentality of, I'm going to give what I think I'm going to get. In other words, everybody else is out to get me and cut my throat, so I'm just going to do it to them first. That way it's justified in my own mind for doing that, because they would have done it first.
mm,
It's the exact inverse. The law of correspondence is the false version.
yeah, it's solipsism, right? They only care about themselves
Mm.
versus someone that is, you know, in harmony with the laws, understands the law of one. You know, we're all a big human family. I think that's why, you know, people that understand objective morality and the laws of nature, they have an immediate connection because they understand this foundational energy that unites all of us. So, you know, when we connect with someone that knows the information for the first time, it's a strong connection. It can be. It's almost like just true human um, familia in some way, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. So I got one more question for us, guys, and then we're going to wrap it up after that. And it's kind of addressed to me, but I'm going to ask for you guys' help a little bit with this, just to see where this goes, and then we'll wrap it up. Um, Diana Diaz says, Douglas, you had spoken about the Sinclair family of Scotland on day one, and they're fleeing from continental Europe. Do you know their family's involvement with dark occult? from that time until today and their whereabouts. So the first thing is the family's whereabouts. I can't say I know exactly where they are, but I can say that I see evidence that they are here in America, in this country, and that there seems to be a connection with the Sinclairs with Samuel Morse, who was the inventor of the Morse code. And that's interesting because that's a form of cryptology, and it's a huge subject. But my whole point about it was how the knowledge had managed to come into the West, following the Dark Age and the anti rationalism of the Latin Christendom, and the idea that they were dark occult, I wouldn't necessarily agree with. But to fully understand that's a huge subject, you would have to really understand, most of the history of continental Europe and understand the difference between Britain, because it's a unique history in Britain. But ideally, the takeaway on it is understanding how the knowledge managed to come into the West and how the modus operandi of the Roman Church was to eradicate anything non-Christian or or not received from their ministry. So anybody else want to chime in on that one? I'd like to hear from all of you on that one, if you can. Anybody?
I'll jump in real quick. I would say that while I don't particularly make it a speciality of mine to study bloodlines or, particular, families regarding, occultism, my speciality lies in the ideologies, and the mind control methodologies that they employ. Um, so speaking as to what happened to that family, the Sinclairs, I wouldn't have any information regarding that, but I could tell Diana that if she wanted to, ask anybody uh, um, about that. The only people that I know that might have more information would who do get into familial bloodline aspects of the dark occult are the two people that I know personally that do that is Fritz Springmeyer and possibly Jay Parker. So they might be avenues of potentially being able to ask for more information. So just wanted to let her know that.
Yeah, I recall Jay talking about that. So yeah, I'd like to revisit some of Jay's work. How about you, Will?
I don't have too much to add to that, but I will say that I don't focus on the bloodlines as well. I don't even really focus on trying to figure out who they are. I mean, I'm aware of the ideologies and the type of people they are, but I'm talking about even Bill Gates. I have a general information. I understand that he's what he is. He's a eugenicist and et cetera, et cetera. The real problem is the majority of people with an incorrect mentality. That's the big problem. So again, it's just kind of honing in and consolidating the information and focusing on the actual causal factors for me personally.
I fully agree with that. It's about following the ideologies. It's not really about the who, it's about the why. However, we do need to be aware of our surroundings and any potential impending danger in our surroundings.
There's definitely a balance to strike, I think, in terms of the research and where you go down that rabbit hole, because like know thy enemy and understand those things, but all those extra there's definitely too many, in my opinion, conspiracy theorists that know way too many facts about this happened and this false flag and whatever, but they don't understand the first thing about themselves and on a spiritual level. you know
Yeah, we
I
need
agree.
to go back to fundamental axioms and put first things first. And that's why they're called principles. That's what has to be focused on primarily. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
And let's hear from Sean before I wrap this up for us. What do you think about this topic, Sean?
And I put my finger up because I was listening to Mark and I said principles and I pointed to my temple and I wasn't actually raising my hand. The Sinclair Broadcasting Group or Sinclair Oil Refining are these things related to that? Lawrence brought up Sinclair Broadcasting Group in the chat.
Yeah, I don't really. Yeah, I mean, I know there's something to the bloodlines. We're talking about dynastic families that have survived through the centuries, and they do hold power. However, the idea of marginalizing a resistance to not only the English crown but also the Roman Church during that Renaissance period, um, I mean, my first suspicion would be that the modus operandi of the Roman Church would be to marginalize anything non-Christian, and the fact that they're being persecuted, the Templars being persecuted by the Church and fleeing to Scotland, was their last safe haven. And then the whole history of William Wallace and Robert Bruce. It's a long story, but it's fascinating to study, and it's something that I study and will continue to study. But again, I agree with the whole panel. It's not about the who, it's about knowing the self and understanding causality, understanding how the nature of evil in our world, and the depths to which we understand the nature of evil is equal to the heights to which we understand good. So if anybody else has anything else to say, I want to thank everybody for your participation in the Q&A, and just great job on presentations and helping make this event happen for us. So it's just been one of the most exciting times of my life, and I hope you all feel the same.
Absolutely. I want to say thank you to everyone who helped to organize the event. Um, just a great job all around from everybody, from all of the presenters, to Brandon for hosting it, to the tech team, to Tyler for really holding down his end of the technology as well. It was an honor to be part of it and to broadcast it live on the One Great Work Network. And I hope everybody who participated and viewed the event thoroughly enjoyed it and learned a lot from it. And I think that this is a prime example of the One Great Work in action.
Will?
Yeah, phenomenal job, everyone, the whole seed team, the presenters. It was solid all the way through the lineup. How you guys had the scheduling and stuff. It was really good, and everyone that attended on all the platforms and viewed. Appreciate you all, and thank you guys for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Great. How about you, Logan?
Yeah, absolutely. It was such an honor and a pleasure to be a part of this event, and it was a really sweet experience to be a presenter and still a participant and a viewer as well. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I agree with Will. Everybody was just solid through and through. I loved the very vast range of information, but of course, it all ties together, so
Yeah.
beautifully, weaves together. And I just love taking it all in over the past 2 days, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So thank you for everyone who put it together and executed. Amazing job.
And let's hear from Sean.
I want to say thank you for being invited to Brandon, and it pushed me to really focus on something that I think to myself, and I have this theory, and I bring it to Mark when in private. I tell Mark, "Hey, listen to this," and he says, "Oh yeah, that's interesting," and then we go about our day, and it's like it's gone, and this helps me focus it, get it all on paper, get it, encapsulated and easy. I mean, it was a learning experience for me, and on many levels. And and plus because it took another year for this to happen, I kept looking and I kept learning, and like
Mm.
Kubrick, the way that it just unfolds like an onion and everything connects to everything, it's not like a dead end, like a fake facsimile. Like it's something that you need to look at and it just keeps going. And it really influenced like I had to rewrite it, and it's way better now than what I had planned for last year. And I'm glad I was able to get it all together, and there's so much that because I kept looking, there's just so much more. And so I'm going to keep doing more and keep releasing pieces because I couldn't get it all in. I only had like an hour. So, I mean, I even went over 17 minutes, but I had to make room for everybody else. I can't just take everybody's time. So, anyway, I thought it was great and it was a learning experience, and I appreciate every minute. Thank you.
I want to personally thank you, Sean, for participating, and thank Logan, Will, and Mark for participating. And I mean, it's like I say, it's been the experience of my life, and you all did such a fantastic job with your personal work, and then helping on the support team. And so I'll go ahead and say good night, and I'll wrap this up for us, gentlemen. So I'm going to take us out here with a little bit of a wrap. Special thanks to Tyler Bloyer, Lauren Striggs on the control team, and special thanks to Autonomy, the One Great Work Network, and the Cubbyhole. And I guess that's it. I hope everybody received value from the information presented at the conference, and look forward to seeing you again in the future. Don't forget to donate at whatonearthishappening.com. You can find gifts there and lots of great information. Also, you can make donations at cubbyhole.com and on the One Great Work Network.com. Thank you, and keep up the great work. Good night. Good night, Joe.